A black belt instructor challenged a modest black woman to spar just to make a joke. But what happened next left the entire dojo in stunned silence. Sometimes the quietest people carry the most shocking secrets, and Tyler Griffin was about to learn why you should never judge a book by its cover. Rebecca Johnson pushed open the heavy glass door of Master Kim's Martial Arts Academy, her worn-out sneakers squeaking softly against the polished floor. The familiar blend of sweat, herbal essential oils, and fierce determination washed over her as she stepped inside. Even though she came here every week to pick up Maya, she always felt a strange mix of comfort and anticipation the moment she crossed the threshold. The spacious training hall was bathed in cold white light from rows of fluorescent fixtures overhead, illuminating the expanse of blue mats where dozens of students of all ages drilled endless combinations. Sharp commands echoed from the instructor's corner, mingling with the thud of feet striking the floor and ragged breaths after each powerful strike. In the far corner, Rebecca immediately spotted her 16-year-old daughter, Maya. She was fully absorbed in a sequence of martial arts techniques alongside a few other students, her face serious and her eyes bright with passion. Watching her daughter's dedication brought an affectionate smile to Rebecca's lips. "Mom," Maya exclaimed as she noticed her mother's arrival, waving energetically. Her cheeks were flushed from exertion, but her grin was as radiant as ever. Rebecca waved back, her gentle smile highlighting her down-to-earth nature. At 38, she wore no makeup, her dark curls streaked with early silver pulled back into a simple ponytail. A faded gray t-shirt and old sweatpants blended her into the crowd of parents lining the walls. "Take your time, sweetheart," Rebecca called out, waving Maya back to her practice before she sat on a bench along the wall. Pulling out her phone, she checked her work emails but kept glancing up to watch how martial arts had transformed her once shy daughter into someone far more confident and assertive. A sharp command from across the hall caught Rebecca's attention. She looked up to see Tyler Griffin guiding a group of more advanced students. Tall and muscular, he wore a pristine white GI with a gleaming black belt. Pride and authority radiated from his expression, but Rebecca also noticed impatience flicker in his eyes whenever he looked at the students of color struggling to execute the more complex moves. "Kick higher, Jackson. Am I running a preschool here?" Tyler barked, his tone mocking. A few embarrassed laughs rippled through the students beside him, but Rebecca saw the hurt flash across the young black boy's face as he bowed his head and pressed on, his enthusiasm clearly deflated. Rebecca frowned, a knot of discomfort tightening in her chest. She'd witnessed Tyler's subtle bias before, especially toward students of color, her own daughter included. He never spoke overtly racist words, but his tone, his gaze, and the way he treated them left no doubt. White parents might shrug it off, but Rebecca felt the sting of injustice keenly. A nearby parent leaned toward another and whispered, "Coach Griffin is tough, but his students earn their belts faster than anywhere else." The other parent replied quietly, a note of hesitation in her voice. "Maybe so, but my kid came home complaining he always gets singled out compared to the white students." Rebecca listened silently, her heart tightening. She knew prejudice ran deep around her, but each time she saw it firsthand, it felt like a fresh wound. Maya never complained, but Rebecca knew her daughter had endured similar slights many times over. She looked back at Tyler, a strange resolve forming in her mind. At some point, she wouldn't just sit by and watch this quiet discrimination. She'd have to confront it directly. But for now, she was just here to pick up Maya, and she refused to let this sour her evening. "Mama, I'm done!" Maya's cheerful voice cut through Rebecca's thoughts. She strode over, sweat beading on her forehead, but her smile undiminished. "Great job, sweetie," Rebecca said warmly, brushing a damp strand of hair from Maya's face. "Let's head home. I'll make your favorite tonight." Maya threw her arms around her mother's arm, oblivious to the glance Tyler cast at them. A look of sneering disdain, the faintest mocking smile playing on his lips. Although Rebecca didn't turn back, she felt that look as if it were a dare. Taking a deep breath, she resolved not to let anyone undermine her or her daughter's self-worth. Yet, as she led Maya out of the dojo, she had no idea that a very different kind of match, one of dignity and justice, awaited her just beyond those doors. Stepping out of the dojo, Rebecca still felt Tyler's icy gaze tracking her and Maya. She gave Maya a quick sideways glance. Her daughter's eyes were still bright, as if she hadn't registered what had just happened. Rebecca exhaled softly, reminding herself to stay strong, because she knew all too well the injustice Maya was unknowingly up against. Today, after work, Rebecca decided to arrive at the academy earlier than usual. She chose a discreet seat in the corner, quietly observing her daughter's class. Rebecca wanted to get a better sense of what was really happening in the dojo, especially how Tyler treated the students of color. The class kicked off with its usual energy. The sound of kicks and determined shouts reverberated through the room. But amid the excitement, Rebecca quickly noticed something was off. In the center of the expansive blue mats, Tyler Griffin, clad in his crisp white gi and gleaming black belt, paced among the students, his cold eyes scanning the young faces before him. "Jackson, how many times do I have to tell you? Do that kick again right now, or stand there until the sun sets." Tyler's voice cut through the air, his glare fixed on a small black boy whose shoulders shook under the pressure. Jackson's face flushed with shame, but he persisted in repeating the move. Rebecca frowned. Tyler's favoritism was laid bare. Right beside Jackson stood Evan, a white student attempting the same kick but with far less finesse. Yet Tyler casually patted Evan on the shoulder and murmured, "It's okay, Evan, take your time, you'll get it." A surge of indignation rose in Rebecca's chest. Around her, the other parents whispered among themselves. The white mothers seated nearby seemed unbothered. In fact, some nodded approvingly at Tyler's tough love approach. They only cared that their own children were praised and encouraged, oblivious to the humiliation being heaped on others. Meanwhile, in another corner, a few parents of color sat silently, their faces taut with worry and anger. Rebecca recognized Marissa, Jackson's mother. The heartbreak on her face was unmistakable as she watched her son being publicly scolded. Yet Marissa remained silent, perhaps like Rebecca, unwilling to draw attention or disrupt her child's training. "Enough, Maya! What was that? You expect to test for your green belt next month with moves like that?" Tyler's sudden shout made Rebecca startle and look toward her daughter. Maya stood frozen, eyes wide at the harsh reprimand from the instructor she'd worked so hard to impress. Disappointment flashed across her face, but she summoned her courage, nodded, and tried the kick again. Rebecca felt her heart tighten as she watched Maya's expression shift from enthusiasm to sadness in an instant. She knew how diligently her daughter had trained to prove herself. Yet to Tyler, it seemed that no amount of effort from Maya or any student of color would ever be enough. The whispers persisted. "Coach Tyler is strict, but that's how you get good fast." Right. If everyone's coddled, how do you separate the talented from the rest? Each comment felt like a knife to Rebecca's heart. She clenched her hand into a small fist hidden beneath her jacket, observing Tyler's blatant bias. This wasn't mere discipline. This was an ugly, deep-seated prejudice he never even bothered to hide completely. "Come on, Maya, stop wasting everyone's time," Tyler snapped, his patience worn thin. Rebecca felt herself rising to defend her daughter, But reason held her back. She reminded herself that Maya needed to learn to handle pressure, that she needed to be stronger in the face of people like Tyler. Still, Rebecca knew she couldn't stay silent if this injustice went on any longer. When class finally ended, Maya quietly gathered her gear, her usual spark dimmed. Rebecca stepped forward and gently wrapped her arms around her daughter's shoulders. She said nothing, but her embrace radiated love and strength, as if to fortify Maya's spirit. Before they left, Rebecca caught Tyler's eye one more time. In that brief moment, she saw pure contempt and disdain flicker in his cold gaze. He smirked, as though daring her to do something about it. Rebecca met his glance with calm, unwavering resolve. No hint of fear. She vowed then that she would take decisive action, not just for Maya, but for every innocent child forced to endure such unfairness day after day. And this time, she knew she would never choose to remain silent again. At the next practice, Rebecca and Maya entered the dojo with a weight heavier than usual. What normally felt like familiar footsteps today were tentative and tense. Although Maya said nothing, Rebecca knew all too well that Tyler's harsh criticism from yesterday still lingered in her daughter's heart. Maya's face remained pensive, and Rebecca gently squeezed her hand, offering silent encouragement. "Don't worry too much, sweetie. Just do your best," Rebecca whispered, though inside she couldn't shake the unease that Tyler's unfair behavior had stirred. Today's dojo atmosphere felt different. Students formed a large circle around the central mat. Parents stood or sat around its perimeter, their faces a mix of curiosity and anticipation. In the very center stood Tyler Griffin, his crisp white GI contrasting sharply with his polished black belt. Every proud, arrogant gesture and word radiated from him. "Hello, everyone," Tyler's cold voice echoed through the hall. "Today, I want to do something a little unusual. We're going to put on a short demonstration to clearly show you the difference between a professional martial artist like me and the amateurs out there." He paused, scanning the circle with a calculating gaze that settled squarely on Rebecca. A mocking smile of pride curled his lips as he pointed directly at her, his tone dripping with disdain. "And I think we've got the perfect volunteer, Miss Johnson, Maya's mother. Always so devoted to bringing her daughter here, but I'm guessing she's never thrown a punch in her life, right?" A few students snickered, but their laughs died when they saw the calm, serious expression on Rebecca's face. The dojo instantly fell silent. Maya stood beside her mother, cheeks flushed with embarrassment, her small hand trembling as she gripped Rebecca's sleeve. "Mom, please," Maya whispered, worry lacing her voice. Tyler took a few steps closer, his mocking edge sharpened. "Don't worry so much, Maya. I promise I'll go easy on your mother. I'll show her, and all of you, exactly why martial arts isn't for just anyone, especially people like her." Rebecca narrowed her eyes, fully aware of the prejudice in his words. Anger flared within her, but she forced herself to remain calm and measured. "Mr. Griffin, I don't think this is necessary. I'm just here to pick up my daughter, not to perform." Tyler laughed harshly, glancing around at the students and parents as if he'd heard the world's funniest joke. "Oh, of course, Miss Johnson. How could I inconvenience someone so busy like you? But I thought it would be interesting for my students to see what real skill looks like." A few white parents chuckled and nodded in agreement, oblivious to his cruelty. Across the room, parents of color sat silently, their faces dark with frustration, but none dared speak up. Rebecca felt the pitying and curious stares burning into her. Her heart ached at the humiliation and helplessness in Maya's eyes, but she knew she could no longer remain silent while injustice played out in front of her daughter, and all these young students who looked to Tyler's behavior as an example. She took a deep breath, lifted her chin, and met Tyler's gaze with unwavering resolve. Her voice rang out clear and firm. "All right, if you want to prove something, I won't back down. But you should also prepare yourself to realize that not everyone is as weak and helpless as you seem to think." A stunned silence fell over the dojo. Students and parents alike stared at the woman they had assumed was timid and quiet. Tyler paused, then burst into a loud, arrogant laugh. But behind his bravado, Rebecca saw a flicker of discomfort and a silent challenge in his eyes. "Oh, really? Miss Johnson, I hope you know what you're getting into. You wouldn't want to embarrass yourself and your daughter any further, would you?" Rebecca held his gaze with steady strength, showing not a hint of fear. She turned to Maya, laying a reassuring hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Don't worry, sweetie, Mommy knows what she's doing." Looking into her mother's eyes, Maya drew on that invisible well of courage and nodded, even as her worry lingered. Tyler then turned back to the circle, a self-satisfied grin on his face. His voice boomed out, confident yet cold. "All right, everyone. Get ready for a show you won't forget. After today, you'll all understand where true martial prowess lies, and why amateurs will always remain amateurs." Rebecca squeezed Maya's hand, a quiet fire of pride and determination igniting in her heart. Though the physical match hadn't started yet, the real fight for dignity and justice had been underway for a long time. A tense hush fell over the dojo after Tyler's provocative announcement. All eyes were fixed on Rebecca and Maya, as if waiting for something to happen. Rebecca stood perfectly still, her posture straight, and her dark brown eyes locked on Tyler's face without the slightest tremor. Her unexpected calm momentarily unsettled him, but the familiar arrogant smile soon returned to his lips. "Ms. Johnson, what's this? Changed your mind so fast?" Tyler stepped a little closer, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Or have you suddenly realized that facing reality is harder than whatever fantasies you had in your head?" A few white students nearby couldn't suppress nervous giggles. In contrast, the students of color fell silent, their anxious, uneasy gazes fixed on Rebecca and Maya. Maya clutched her mother's sleeve, her little heart pounding with confusion and fear. Seeing her daughter's distress, Rebecca gently placed a hand on Maya's shoulder, stroking it reassuringly. Then she took a step forward, her eyes calm but resolute as she faced Tyler. "Mr. Griffin, if you want to hold a match like this, I don't mind, but I have one condition." Tyler raised an eyebrow, a half-smile playing on his lips as if he'd just heard the world's funniest joke. "A condition? I'm intrigued. Go ahead. What kind of condition could someone like you possibly propose?" Rebecca ignored his condescension. She drew in a deep breath and spoke softly, but clearly enough for every parent and student in the room to hear. "If you win, I will admit that I know nothing about martial arts, just as you say. But if you lose," Rebecca emphasized each word, her gaze sharpening challengingly, "you must apologize publicly, in front of every parent and student here, for your disrespectful and racist behavior over all this time." Her words hung in the air, and the dojo fell into complete silence. The white parents standing near Tyler exchanged looks of shock and displeasure. A few shook their heads, apparently unable to believe that a quiet woman like Rebecca would dare make such a demand of a renowned instructor like Tyler Griffin. Meanwhile, the parents of color began to exchange glances filled with admiration and hope. At last, someone had the courage to stand up against the injustice they and their children had endured for so long. Tyler froze for a moment, then burst into a mocking laugh, his cold eyes drilling into Rebecca as if she'd just told the most absurd story in the world. "Apologize? he sneered. "Are you really under the impression you can beat me? You're serious?" Rebecca's expression didn't waver. She remained calm, unfazed by his taunts. "Yes. If you're truly that confident in your abilities, this condition shouldn't be a problem, should it?" Discomfort flickered in Tyler's eyes, but he quickly regained his smug composure. He threw his arms wide toward the spectators and spoke with condescending confidence. "Fine, I accept your condition. If I lose, which of course won't happen, I will apologize to everyone here, although I have no idea what I'd be apologizing for since I've done nothing wrong. But, Miss Johnson, you should prepare yourself, because you'll certainly need that apology when this match is over." At his words, some white parents immediately voiced their approval, chuckling and nodding in confident anticipation of Tyler's easy victory. A few parents of color exchanged worried looks, silently hoping Rebecca really knew what she was doing, even as many still doubted her. Maya stood close to her mother, her small face etched with tension. She whispered in a shaky voice, "Are you sure, Mom? You don't have to do this." Rebecca knelt to meet her daughter's gaze, speaking softly yet firmly. "Sometimes we can't back down, sweetheart. I'll be okay, and I know I'm doing the right thing." Maya studied her mother's eyes and felt that invisible strength she always admired. She gave a small nod, her racing heart calming just a bit despite her lingering worries. Tyler then strode to the center of the circle and addressed everyone, his face alight with confidence. "The match will take place right here, tomorrow. Make sure you all come to see it. I guarantee it will be the most unforgettable demonstration you've ever witnessed." Rebecca heard every word. Though she remained outwardly composed, inside a righteous fire of determination and anger blazed within her. She knew this fight wasn't just a personal contest, it was a battle for dignity and justice, and this time she would not fail. That evening, after coming home, Rebecca sat alone by the living room window, her eyes contemplative as she gazed out at the small street, slowly being swallowed by darkness. The familiar sounds of the city at night now seemed like distant echoes, merging with the endless stream of her thoughts. Maya had been fast asleep for hours, and this was the moment Rebecca finally gave herself permission to confront the memories she'd buried so long ago. Tyler's taunting words still echoed sharply in her mind. Each sneer, each mocking glance cutting into Rebecca's pride like a razor's edge. But what wounded her most wasn't his insult itself. It was the painful recollections Tyler had unintentionally unearthed from that shadowy chapter of her past she had worked so hard to forget. It had been ages since she'd thought about the name Silent Storm, the moniker that once sent shockwaves through the entire MMA world. Back then, she was known as Rebecca Storm Williams, the young black fighter who'd claimed the MMA World Championship 3 times in a row. In the ring, she was famous for her calm, cold, but ruthlessly precise style. Opponents admitted that whenever Rebecca stepped onto the mat, the air around them seemed to freeze, crushing their spirit before the first bell even rang. But now, all that glory felt like a distant story she'd purposefully closed, like a book she had sealed forever. Rebecca closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and fought to suppress the flood of emotions rising within her. The last image she held of her glorious past wasn't the roar of the crowd or the weight of the championship belt. It was a fateful, tear-soaked night of tragedy. It was a freezing, rain-lashed evening, the night before the most important fight of her career, the one the entire MMA world had been holding its breath to witness. That night, her younger brother Marcus Williams, the biggest fan she ever had, called her before the fight. "I'm on my way, sis. I'll cheer you on like always. Don't worry. You're winning this one for sure." She could still hear the excitement in Marcus's voice, the last call he ever made. But that night, Marcus never arrived. A catastrophic car accident on the slick, rain-swept road stole her brother's life forever. When Rebecca learned the news, the fight hadn't even begun. She collapsed in the locker room, her strength and will evaporating in an instant. She refused to step into the ring, refused any condolences. All she felt was an infinite emptiness and a guilt that would never fade. After Marcus's funeral, Rebecca announced her retirement, quitting MMA for good despite desperate pleas from colleagues, coaches, and fans. She couldn't bear the sight of another ring, the place that held too many painful memories she couldn't escape. Rebecca left her old city, changed her surname from Williams to Johnson, and moved to a new place, determined to start over from zero. She never revealed her true identity to anyone. She just wanted to live like an ordinary woman, a single mother devoted to protecting Maya from any hurt and from the dark past she herself had endured. But now, Tyler Griffin had awoken a part of her she'd long avoided. Rebecca opened her eyes, resolve hardened in her gaze. She knew she couldn't hide any longer, not just for her own pride, but for Maya and for every other student of color who'd endured injustice and scorn, just as she once had. Rebecca rose slowly, walked to her wardrobe, and opened the bottom drawer. Nestled beneath layers of worn clothing lay her old silver and black MMA championship belt and faded photographs, haunting reminders of a past both glorious and devastating. She lifted the belt, her fingertips tracing each scratch and scar from those brutal battles years ago. Memories of Marcus surged back, but this time, instead of drowning in sorrow, Rebecca felt a new fire ignite within her. "Marcus, I'm sorry I ran away for so long," she whispered, her voice trembling with determination. "But I promise you, this time I won't back down. I'll fight for you, for Maya, for the justice we both believed in." Rebecca slid the belt back into the drawer and closed it with finality. Her eyes had completely transformed. Not the gaze of a subdued, silent woman, but of a true warrior. Silent Storm, the quiet storm of old, had returned, this time to demand the justice and respect she and others like her deserved. Rebecca knew that tomorrow's match against Tyler wasn't just a personal battle. It was the most important fight of her life, one for justice, for honor, and for the memory of her beloved brother. And this time, she was certain she would not fail. The next afternoon, the late sun streamed through the large windows, draping a thin veil of light over the training floor at Master Kim's Martial Arts Academy. Today's atmosphere was unlike any other. Every corner of the room was packed with students and parents. They stood shoulder to shoulder, their eyes brimming with a mixture of curiosity and anticipation, all focused on the center of the mat where Tyler Griffin stood, ready for the demonstration he was sure would be an overwhelming victory. Rebecca stepped onto the mat with calm composure, clad in her usual loose t-shirt and simple sweatpants. She swept her curly hair back into a neat ponytail at her nape, her face betraying no hint of nerves. A hush fell over the crowd as everyone watched the woman they all assumed was about to enter the most unbalanced fight of her life. Tyler fixed her with a cold, mocking stare and let a smug grin cross his face. The black belt instructor strode to the center of the ring and raised his hand, signaling for silence. "Welcome, everyone, to this special match," he announced, his voice clear and resonant. "As promised, I'll show you all the clear difference between a professional martial artist and an ordinary person with zero fight training." He swept his gaze over the audience, pride radiating from his confident smile. "Ms. Johnson," Tyler called out, "are you ready, or do you need a last-minute change of heart?" Rebecca met his challenge with a steady nod, her eyes sharp but unflinching. She said nothing, simply affirmed she was ready. Tyler shrugged theatrically, turning back to the crowd with a playful smirk. "All right, since you're sure, let's get started. I promise to be gentle so you won't get hurt. I am a gentleman after all." A few white students tittered, sending uncomfortable ripples through Rebecca, but she remained motionless, poised and ready. Without hesitation, Tyler slipped into a defensive stance and launched into a series of high, showy kicks, each one stopping just inches from Rebecca's body, deliberately flaunting his control. A smattering of applause rose from the white students and parents, while pitying and mocking glances were cast toward Rebecca, as if they assumed she'd made a grave mistake accepting the challenge. "See?" Tyler boomed, following each flourish with a confident declaration. "Ms. Johnson here clearly has no martial arts skill. I hope after today she, and all of you, understands what true, disciplined training really looks like." Maya stood at the edge of the mat, her heart hammering in her chest, tiny hands clenched together. She stared at her mother, fear flooding her eyes, despite Rebecca's earlier encouragement to trust in her. Rebecca remained unmoved by Tyler's arrogant display. She simply shifted her weight, taking minuscule steps to avoid every strike, just enough movement to keep herself completely safe from his attacks. Her calm precision visibly frustrated Tyler. His grin faded, replaced by a flash of irritation. He realized Rebecca's composure was an unspoken challenge, as if she was daring him to land a hit. "Aren't you going to fight back?" he snapped, delivering a sharper kick that whipped past her shoulder, this time with genuine force rather than showmanship. Still quiet, Rebecca's dark gaze never wavered from his face. Finally, her voice rang out, calm but laced with subtle defiance. "I thought this was supposed to be a professional's demonstration. I'm just waiting for you to show me everything you've got." Her words drew gasps from those nearby. Anger flared in Tyler's eyes. He couldn't believe this unassuming woman with no fighting pedigree dared to taunt him in front of everyone. He stepped back, inhaled a deep breath to regain his composure. He refused to lose his cool in front of the audience, but his arrogance made it impossible to tolerate Rebecca's serene yet mocking stare. "Miss Johnson, if you're that confident, maybe I don't need to hold back anymore," he growled, aggression igniting in his eyes. His next flurry of strikes came faster, harder, each one intended to break her defenses. Rebecca flowed through every attack, evading with graceful, razor-sharp precision, each move barely inches away from the tip of his foot or fist. The parents and students began to sense something unusual. At first, they assumed her dodges were lucky, but now they realized each evasion was executed with astonishing accuracy. The more Tyler attacked, the more enraged he became, his breathing growing ragged. He couldn't understand why this ordinary woman could remain so composed and precise against his every blow. What infuriated him most was her unshakable calm, as though all the techniques he'd honed over years were nothing more than child's plays to her. "You think dodging forever will make you win?" Tyler snarled through clenched teeth, his voice thick with frustration. Rebecca didn't answer. She simply held his gaze, icy calm in her eyes. But inside, she knew it was time to teach him, and everyone watching, a lesson. This wasn't just another sparring match. It was the reckoning for his arrogance and prejudice. The dojo felt thick with tension and an overwhelming silence. Tyler, now completely out of patience, unleashed a barrage of fierce kicks and punches, no longer holding back the showmanship of earlier. His strikes carried raw anger and spite, aimed directly at Rebecca, as if he wanted to shatter the infuriating calm on her face. Rebecca remained rooted in place, but something fundamental had shifted. She was no longer the frail, ordinary woman everyone assumed would be easily defeated. Every subtle movement and evasion she made was impossibly precise and fluid, as if she'd anticipated each attack long before it came. Tyler threw a powerful straight punch at her, but in an instant she dipped aside, the back of his fist whistling past her shoulder by mere inches. The spectators held their breath at her effortless yet exact reaction. Tyler immediately followed with a lightning-quick roundhouse kick, but again, Rebecca glided back a single step, letting his foot slice through empty air. The dojo's atmosphere changed in a heartbeat. The mocking whispers had fallen silent, replaced by astonished, confused murmurs from both students and parents. "What on earth is happening?" a nearby white parent whispered, eyes wide as she watched Rebecca. "How can she do that?" Across the mat, Marissa, Jackson's mother, long accustomed to seeing her son bullied by Tyler, couldn't hide her awe. She murmured loud enough for others to hear, "My goodness, she's nothing like we thought." Rebecca continued to dodge Tyler's furious assaults flawlessly, moving with grace yet never rushing or panicking. Each tiny sidestep, each lean or duck, was timed to perfection, causing Tyler's most devastating strikes to miss by a hair's breadth. Tyler's confidence crumbled. He grew visibly flustered, his breathing quickening and his face reddening with anger and frustration. His eyes burned with bewilderment and rage. He could not fathom how an ordinary woman like Rebecca could so effortlessly evade his strongest, most precise techniques. "What game are you playing at, Rebecca?" Tyler barked, his voice sharp with fury. "Are you just going to dodge forever? Are you afraid to face me?" Rebecca offered no verbal reply. She simply stared back at him, her eyes colder and more authoritative than ever. It was the same gaze that once made the world's top MMA fighters tremble with fear. It was the look of silent storm, the silent tempest, returned after years of slumber. Rebecca knew exactly what she was doing. Each evasion wasn't merely defense, it was a clear message to Tyler, and to everyone watching, that arrogance and contempt are never true strength. At the edge of the mat, Maya's eyes were wide with wonder as she watched her mother's astonishing display. She could hardly believe the gentle, composed woman she knew was now showing such remarkable martial skill. Maya's heartbeat quickened, not with fear, but with pride and unwavering belief in her mother. "I can't believe it. She must have some training," another parent exclaimed, astonishment and skepticism mingling in their voice. Nobody could move like that without serious practice. A few students of color near Maya broke into relieved, excited smiles. For the first time, they saw Tyler, their unfair instructor, brought to a state of confusion and discomfort. Sensing the crowd's shift, Tyler grew even more frantic. He surged forward with even greater speed and power, throwing strikes so fierce that missing his target threw him off balance, leaving him stumbling. He realized that his own anger had made his once perfect technique sloppy and inaccurate. Rebecca stood her ground, unruffled, as though Tyler's furious blows were nothing more than meaningless wind. She still had not thrown a single counterattack, but her silent, icy composure was enough to send shivers through everyone in the dojo. Across the room, the spectators' gazes were transforming. No longer pitying or mocking Rebecca, they now watched with curiosity, amazement, and growing respect. Even those who had previously cheered for Tyler fell silent, following each of Rebecca's flawless movements with bewildered admiration. Rebecca recognized the change, but she knew this was only the beginning. She would stay patient and composed until Tyler, and everyone else, understood what she had long known. True strength never lies in arrogance and contempt, but in humility, unwavering resolve, and the refusal to back down under any pressure. The dojo's atmosphere was electric, with tension and silence so thick it felt like a taut string ready to snap. Tyler, now utterly out of patience, unleashed a relentless barrage of kicks and punches, no longer holding back the gentle showmanship of before. His strikes brimmed with raw anger and desperation, each one aimed to shatter the infuriating calm on Rebecca's face. Rebecca remained perfectly still, but something fundamental had shifted. She was no longer the frail, ordinary woman everyone assumed would be easily defeated. Every subtle dodge and lean she made was executed with uncanny precision and grace, as if she'd anticipated each blow before it even left his body. Tyler launched a powerful straight punch at her, yet in a heartbeat she slipped aside, his fist grazing past her shoulder by mere inches. The onlookers gasped at her effortless, exact reaction. Immediately, Tyler followed with a lightning-fast roundhouse kick, but Rebecca simply took one measured step back, letting his foot slice harmlessly through the empty air. The crowd's mood flipped in an instant. The earlier snickers and mocking whispers fell silent, replaced by awed murmurs of confusion from both students and parents. "What's going on?" whispered a white parent nearby, eyes wide as she watched Rebecca. "How can she do that?" Across the mat, Marissa, Jackson's mother, long used to seeing her son bullied by Tyler, couldn't hide her admiration. "Goodness," she murmured softly, loud enough for others to hear. "She's nothing like we thought." Rebecca continued to evade Tyler's furious assault flawlessly, moving with serene control rather than panic. Each tiny sidestep, each head dip, was executed at exactly the right moment, sending his most powerful techniques whistling past empty space. Tyler's confidence crumbled. He grew visibly flustered, breathing ragged, face flushed with anger and frustration. His eyes blazed with disbelief. How could a seemingly ordinary woman so effortlessly dodge his finest, deadliest moves? "What game are you playing, Rebecca?" he snarled, voice thick with rage. "Are you just going to keep dodging like a coward? Are you afraid to face me?" Rebecca offered no reply. She simply fixed him with a steely, unblinking stare, the same look that once froze the world's top MMA fighters in their tracks. It was the gaze of silent storm, the silent tempest, returned at last. She knew exactly what she was doing. Each precise evasion wasn't just defense. It was a clear message to Tyler and everyone watching. Arrogance and contempt are never true strength. At the edge of the ring, the students of color exchanged hopeful, supportive glances. At first tentative, the encouragement grew. A few even clapped softly. Their quiet applause a powerful show of solidarity Rebecca could feel even over the din. Sensing their shift, Tyler's fury deepened. He paused, scanning the crowd with a venomous glare. "Who clapped just now?" he barked. "You all enjoy cheering for weakness? Or do you just like seeing me embarrassed?" No one answered, but Tyler's gaze flicked to those defiant faces. He felt deeply insulted. Turning back to Rebecca, his features twisted in rage. "I'm done holding back, Rebecca," he hissed through clenched teeth. "I'll make you regret ever challenging me." Rebecca didn't flinch or show fear. She simply met his glare with the same unshakable calm that had unnerved him all along. "Go ahead," she said softly, her voice composed yet brimming with strength. "But don't forget the conditions we agreed on." Her reminder was like pouring gasoline on a fire. Tyler lost all restraint, charging in with more ferocious punches and kicks than ever before. Yet, in his blind rage, his technique faltered. Each strike became sloppy and overreaching. Rebecca easily slipped every attack with the smallest, most precise movements, leaving him off balance and stumbling. The dojo's tension peaked. No one dared breathe too loudly. All eyes fixed on Rebecca with a mix of shock, admiration, and growing respect. It dawned on them. She hadn't thrown a single counterpunch, yet she completely controlled the match in a way no one could explain. Tyler's panic mounted. He panted heavily, sweat beading on his forehead. Wild desperation and fury blazed in his eyes. He couldn't fathom why an unassuming woman like Rebecca could so utterly dominate him. Rebecca sensed he'd hit his breaking point. She knew it was time to end the match, not with violence, but with her unyielding calm, dignity, and resolve. Her goal was to show everyone there that true strength never lies in arrogance or contempt, and that justice always prevails, no matter how fierce the struggle. She inhaled slowly, steadying herself for the final move she knew would forever change Tyler's, and everyone else's, understanding of real power. Sensing that Tyler's loss of control had reached its peak, Rebecca knew the decisive moment of the match was at hand. She stood perfectly still in the dojo, tall and proud, her gaze calm yet resolute, as if she'd known the outcome all along. Her astonishing composure stood in stark contrast to the chaos roiling inside Tyler. Tyler paused, breathing heavily, his face flushed with anger and humiliation as though he might explode. He straightened up, fists clenched, his entire body trembling with uncontrollable rage. His eyes locked onto Rebecca, filled with hostility and bitter resentment. All of his usual pride and confidence had evaporated, replaced by blind fury, and a desperate need to prove he was still the strongest, and unequivocally in the right. "I'm ending this right now," Tyler roared, his voice echoing menacingly throughout the dojo. Without hesitation, he charged at Rebecca with overwhelming speed and power, unleashing his signature spinning kick. The technique he was most proud of, the one that had made previous opponents yield instantly. He delivered the kick with all the might and last-ditch desperation he could muster, and the air in the dojo seemed to freeze as every eye tracked his movement. Rebecca watched Tyler's motion with pinpoint accuracy. She saw the clumsiness, the loss of control, and the desperation in his decisive strike. She knew that his anger had forced him to commit the most fundamental error in martial arts, losing his inner calm and balance. Just as the powerful kick was about to strike her, Rebecca moved. For the first time since the match began, she launched a counter, though not the fierce strike Tyler expected. Instead, she simply leaned aside with absolute precision and, in one fluid motion, extended her hand to gently touch the incoming leg. The swift, feather-light gesture seemed almost harmless, but it instantly shattered Tyler's balance. He stumbled in midair, spun awkwardly, and crashed hard onto the mat, leaving everyone in stunned disbelief. Silence blanketed the dojo. No breathing, no whispers, nothing but wide-eyed shock as every spectator struggled to process what they'd just witnessed. Tyler lay motionless for a few seconds, eyes wide with horror and confusion. He couldn't fathom what had happened. A moment ago, he'd been certain of his victory, and now he lay defeated by a single, effortless move from the woman he'd always underestimated. The students and parents around exchanged looks of astonishment, as if witnessing a miracle. Those who had once banked on Tyler's absolute dominance now stood speechless, unable to form a single word. The students of color, including Maya, froze before slowly recognizing the extraordinary feat. In their hearts swelled joy, relief, and immense pride. Their admiration for Rebecca deepened into profound respect and gratitude. Tyler propped himself up on one hand, trembling, not from pain, but from the searing humiliation. He scanned the room and met astonished, questioning stares that magnified his shame. "No, this can't be," he stammered, voice choked with panic. He couldn't accept that the small, ordinary woman he'd derided had bested him with such grace. Rebecca approached him calmly, her stride measured and unwavering. Looking down at him with cool eyes, she spoke softly yet firmly. "Tyler, I hope you now understand that true strength isn't about flashy technique, physical power, or arrogance. True strength lies in humility, respect for others, and the mastery of oneself." Tyler fell silent, his face pale and his gaze hollow. He dared not meet Rebecca's eyes, for inside him burned a shameful awareness of his utter defeat. Then, from the crowd, gentle applause began. First tentative, then swelling into a triumphant roar that filled the dojo. They applauded Rebecca not only for winning the match, but for teaching everyone a vital lesson in courage, conviction, and justice. Rebecca turned to see Maya standing with tears of pride and emotion shining in her eyes. She offered her daughter a soft, reassuring smile, letting her know that everything would be all right, and that she would always be strong enough to protect Maya and anyone else facing injustice or prejudice in their lives. The dojo remained engulfed in an impossible silence, every eye fixed on Tyler as he propped himself up on his hands, trying awkwardly to rise, only to falter again. His face was ashen, like someone abruptly awakened from the sweetest dream, forced to confront a harsh reality he'd long refused to accept. Rebecca stayed where she was, her gaze steady and resolute on Tyler. There was no hatred or smug triumph in her eyes. Instead, a calm, respectful gravity, an understanding of the very mistake he had just made. At last, Tyler managed to pull himself upright, though his legs shook and his eyes stared blankly at the familiar faces he'd once dismissed or looked down upon. Those same people now regarded him with shock and disappointment. Rebecca stepped forward a little, keeping just enough distance. Then she spoke, her voice calm yet firm, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Tyler, what you've just experienced is a lesson you must never forget. Never underestimate anyone because of their appearance or the color of their skin." Her words were like a precise cut, not meant to wound, but to awaken a deep realization within him. They reverberated through the dojo and echoed in every mind, freezing the room once more. A few students, especially those of color who'd long endured Tyler's bias, began to applaud, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. Their applause swelled into a thunderous ovation, a resounding endorsement of Rebecca's message and a firm rebuke of Tyler's arrogance and prejudice. Tyler stood paralyzed amid the applause, unable to believe what he was seeing and hearing. For the first time, he understood what it felt like to be on the receiving end of ridicule and scorn, the bitter, humiliating feeling he had once inflicted on others. Maya stood beside her mother, pride and emotion shining in her eyes. Tears slipped down her cheeks, no longer tears of fear, but tears of unwavering confidence and boundless pride. Tyler tried to speak, but his words caught in his throat. His customary arrogance and certainty were gone, replaced by a raw vulnerability he could not disguise. I didn't mean to," he stammered, a weak defense that even he knew was meaningless now. Rebecca looked directly into his eyes, her tone gentler but still earnest. "Tyler, no one is born perfect, but everyone deserves respect and fair treatment. Your strength, your skill, none of it matters if it isn't accompanied by humility and respect for others." Her heartfelt words compelled him to lower his gaze in shame. There was no escape from the truth he'd long avoided. He had been wrong, utterly wrong. The dojo's atmosphere lightened, the heavy tension dissolving now that Tyler had faced his crushing defeat and embraced a painful truth. Some parents and students who'd stood back now moved closer, their expressions softer, offering him the chance to learn and make amends. Rebecca sensed the shift and felt grateful, because sometimes a small match like this can teach more than 1,000 lectures. To her, today's fight wasn't about proving who was stronger. It was about delivering a powerful message: equality, self-respect, and human dignity. Finally, Tyler lifted his head. His eyes no longer held challenge or spite, but were clouded with remorse and embarrassment. He met Rebecca's gaze and with great effort found the words he needed. "Ms. Johnson, I'm sorry." Silence fell again, this time warm and forgiving. Everyone present, including those Tyler had mistreated, felt the sincerity in his apology. Rebecca nodded gently and offered him a meaningful, compassionate smile. No further words were needed. She knew that from this moment on, Tyler had begun to learn the most important lesson of his life, one about humility, fairness, and the true power of a heart that respects and cares for others. In the gentle hush that followed Tyler's heartfelt apology, Maya's trembling, emotional voice suddenly rang out, drawing everyone's attention in the dojo. "Mom, you are the Silent Storm. Rebecca Johnson, 3-time MMA world champion." Her words brimmed with uncontainable pride, her voice quivering with emotion. Every pair of eyes snapped to the little girl, incredulous astonishment written on every face. No one, not even Tyler, could have imagined that Maya's declaration was true. For a moment, silence fell again, and then a ripple of whispers, stunned curiosity and wonder spread among the students and parents. A few people hurriedly pulled out their phones, fingers shaking as they searched Rebecca Johnson's Silent Storm online, eager to confirm what Maya had just revealed. Within seconds, gasps and murmurs of amazement filled the dojo as old news articles and famous fight videos popped up on their screens. There she was, Rebecca, hoisting her championship belt, her icy, commanding gaze unmistakable. All doubt vanished at once. A young male student, eyes wide in disbelief, whispered loudly enough for those around him to hear, "Oh my gosh, she really is the legendary Silent Storm. I can't believe we've been standing next to an MMA champion this whole time and had no idea." The skeptical, condescending, or pitying looks they'd once cast now transformed into deep respect and awe. Even parents who had initially been indifferent, or who had quietly applauded Tyler's arrogance, bowed their heads in silent acknowledgement of their mistake in judging someone by appearance or skin color. In a corner, Marissa, Jackson's mom, watched Rebecca with tears of pride and gratitude welling in her eyes. She wiped them away, feeling as though a long-borne burden of injustice had finally been lifted. Tyler stood frozen, head bowed, unable to meet Rebecca's gaze. He had imagined every possible scenario for this woman, but never that he would be undone by the very MMA legend he'd only heard of in passing. Now, his arrogance and prejudice lay in ruins, and the only thing he could do was listen and accept the harsh lesson fate had delivered. A young student of color who'd often been harshly criticized by Tyler suddenly rose, excitement shining in his voice as he addressed the crowd. "We actually have an MMA legend right here in this dojo. This wasn't just a match. It was the greatest lesson in self-respect and equality I've ever seen." Applause erupted once more, this time louder and more heartfelt than ever, spreading through the dojo in a wave of solidarity. Everyone looked at Rebecca with fresh admiration. She wasn't just the winner of a fight, she was the teacher of a life-changing lesson about dignity and the true measure of a person. Rebecca offered a soft, gracious smile and bowed her head in thanks to the cheering crowd, knowing in her heart that this victory belonged not only to her, but to everyone who'd ever been underestimated or treated unfairly because of their appearance or skin color. She turned to Maya, who stood tearful yet beaming with pride. Rebecca stepped forward and gently embraced her daughter, whispering in her ear, "Thank you, Maya. Thank you for giving me the strength to stand up and protect the values I believe in." Maya hugged her mother tightly and replied, her voice thick with emotion, "You've always been the greatest hero in my heart. I'm so proud to be your daughter." Tyler quietly stepped back, his eyes now free of hostility and filled instead with shame and newfound respect. For the first time in his life, he truly understood the most important lesson he'd long neglected, that humility and respect for others are the truest sources of strength. Other parents and students moved closer to Rebecca, eager to thank her personally and show their respect for the courageous, resilient woman who had profoundly changed their perspective. The dojo's atmosphere was no longer just one of awe at a champion's prowess, but of genuine empathy, understanding, and deep respect for her unwavering courage and integrity. Standing amidst them, Rebecca realized that her life had turned a new page. This chapter would no longer conceal her painful past, but would offer her a chance to inspire others and spread a message of self-respect, equality, and the enduring power of a compassionate heart. Amid the heartfelt applause and respectful gazes directed at Rebecca, Tyler remained frozen in a corner of the room, his eyes fixed on the floor as an intense battle of shame and regret raged inside him. After all those years reigning at the top of this dojo, for the first time, Tyler truly felt the loneliness and helplessness he had inflicted on so many others. The dojo gradually quieted, everyone waiting to see what would happen next. Then Tyler stepped forward with heavy, deliberate footsteps, as if waging a war against his own pride, a war between honor and genuine remorse. Standing before Rebecca, he finally lifted his head, looking at her with a depth of contrition no one had ever seen from him. The usual arrogance had vanished, replaced by exhaustion and utter humiliation. He drew in a shaky breath, and his voice, trembling but loud enough for all to hear, began, "I want to say, I am truly sorry, Miss Johnson. I was wrong. I let my pride and prejudice blind me, and I treated many of you here unfairly. I never realized how deeply my actions and words could wound." He paused to steady himself, then, voice thick with emotion, continued, "Today, I have learned the greatest lesson, one I should have learned long ago. I used to think martial arts was all about strength and defeating others, but I was completely mistaken. I'm truly sorry for not respecting you and so many other students, all because of my own foolish biases." His heartfelt apology stunned the dojo into absolute silence. Even those he had mistreated looked at him with softened eyes, recognizing in that moment that this was a sincere apology, born from the harshest lesson of his life. Rebecca regarded him with calm compassion. She nodded gently and replied, "I accept your apology, Tyler. None of us is perfect, but what matters most is recognizing our mistakes and having the courage to correct them." Turning toward the entire dojo, her voice clear yet gentle, she said, "I want all of you to remember that martial arts is never about defeating or belittling others. True martial arts fosters respect, humility, and inner strength. We train not to prove who is more powerful, but to learn self-control, preserve our dignity, and remain calm even in the face of challenge or injustice." She let her words sink in, looking around the room as she emphasized each point. Most importantly, remember that no one has the right to judge or demean another based on appearance, skin color, or background. Martial arts teach us that every person deserves respect and fair treatment. Her powerful message resonated through the dojo, touching every heart present. Students and parents stood in thoughtful silence, absorbing the profound lesson they had witnessed firsthand. A few younger students bowed their heads, tears in their eyes as they reflected on times they'd faced injustice or had themselves judged others unfairly. Parents who once looked on indifferently or even condoned discrimination now exchanged glances of shame and newfound empathy. Marissa quietly stepped forward and placed her hand on Rebecca's shoulder, her voice tender yet clear enough for all to hear. "Thank you, Rebecca. Today, you've given us an invaluable lesson we will never forget." A young student of color then spoke up, voice unsteady but sincere. "From today on, we will never let anyone endure injustice or prejudice again. I promise to always remember this lesson and treat everyone with genuine respect." Rebecca surveyed the upturned faces before her, her heart swelling with an indescribable emotion. She knew that today's victory was far more than winning a match. It was the moment that would spark lasting, positive change in the thoughts and actions of everyone in this room. Tyler remained still, listening to Rebecca and the other students' heartfelt words, each one a gentle yet sharp reminder of painful truths about himself. He looked up once more, meeting Rebecca's eyes, and in a steady but sincere voice said, "Thank you, Rebecca. You didn't just beat me in the ring today. You've taught me an invaluable lesson I will carry for the rest of my life. I promise you and everyone here that I will change, and I will never again let pride or prejudice guide me." His honest words drew a strong chorus of agreement from the students and parents, who applauded once more, not just for Rebecca's courage, but for Tyler's bravery in acknowledging and facing his mistakes. Rebecca glanced around the dojo one last time, her heart lighter than ever. She knew that today she had fulfilled a mission even greater than any championship bout. She had delivered a lasting, transformative lesson in humility, respect, and true equality for all. From that day on, a wave of positive change began to ripple through every corner of Master Kim's martial arts academy. Tyler's heartfelt apology was far more than empty words. It marked a pivotal turning point that ushered in a new chapter for everyone there. Once known for his sometimes overly strict discipline and a clear bias, Tyler completely transformed his teaching approach. He no longer judged students based on skin color or appearance. Instead, he took great care to help each person develop to the full extent of their own abilities and character. His attitude became open and humble, and, most importantly, he constantly reminded his students of the invaluable lesson he'd learned from Rebecca. Tyler even made it a point to study the history and lived experiences of people of color, so he could better understand the injustices they endured. This not only made him more sensitive and thoughtful as an instructor, but also helped him rebuild the trust and respect he had lost in the eyes of both students and parents. Rebecca quickly became a living symbol of inspiration, not just for her fellow students at the academy, but for the wider community as well. Whenever she arrived at the dojo with Maya by her side, she was met with deep respect, especially from the young students of color who found renewed confidence in their own potential and in the values of perseverance, courage, and fairness. Parents who had once doubted or overlooked issues of bias began having meaningful conversations with their children about the importance of respect and equality. Beyond simply changing their attitudes, they actively joined community events and initiatives aimed at fostering understanding and unity among different ethnic groups. Master Kim's Academy soon became renowned not only for its powerful martial arts techniques and championship titles, but also as a place that truly nurtures humility, mutual respect, and the intrinsic worth of every individual. For many young students, particularly those of color who once hesitated to step through its doors, the academy transformed into a second home, where they felt encouraged to express themselves without fear of discrimination. Tyler even organized special discussion panels with Rebecca, inviting her to share her personal journey, how she overcame prejudice, and the profound lessons she learned during her legendary career. These talks drew large audiences of parents and students alike, all of whom came away with the understanding that true strength isn't about dominating others, but about treating everyone with kindness and deep respect. Rebecca never failed to remind everyone that the match wasn't simply about her defeating Tyler. It was about all of them overcoming their own prejudices, injustices, and flawed thinking. Maya, who had witnessed her mother's trials firsthand, now stood beside her with pride, actively spreading the message of equality and self-respect to her friends. That evening, as Rebecca and Maya prepared to leave the dojo after a deeply moving exchange with the students, they walked down the same hallway where the fateful match had taken place. Rebecca paused and glanced back at the room where it all began, offering a gentle smile. "What are you thinking about, Mom?" Maya asked, squeezing her mother's hand. Rebecca smoothed back her daughter's hair, her eyes tender yet filled with meaning. "I'm thinking that everything we do, every fight we face, matters less than how we treat one another. Sweetheart, true strength isn't about showing off. It lives in our hearts and in how we treat each other. Always remember that." Maya looked into her mother's eyes and nodded, her voice full of emotion. "I promise I'll always remember, Mom, and I'll do my best to be as strong as you." Rebecca embraced Maya, feeling the warmth and power of her daughter's love. Together, they stepped out of the dojo under the soft glow of the setting sun, each step infused with confidence and pride as they headed toward a future where they would continue to share messages of equality and courage with everyone they encountered. As the two of them disappeared down the path, Tyler remained at the dojo's entrance, quietly watching their figures fade away. A new emotion stirred within him, no longer shame or resentment, but genuine gratitude. He knew that painful though that match had been, it was precisely what saved him from his own arrogance and prejudice, helping him become a better person. The last rays of sunlight streamed through the dojo windows, illuminating the room and reminding everyone of a lesson more precious than any victory. True strength isn't measured by how we showcase ourselves, but by the kindness in our hearts and the way we treat one another. The story of Rebecca Johnson isn't just an ordinary martial arts match. It's a priceless lesson in humility, respect, and the true power of the heart. Have you ever witnessed or experienced a similar situation where your initial prejudices were completely overturned once the truth came to light? Share your story in the comments below. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like the video and share it with your friends and family to help spread this powerful message. And be sure to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any more inspiring stories coming your way. Thank you for joining us.